Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Trojan Dash. I know things look a little bit different. Reagan's not with us anymore. He's gone on to other endeavors, but we're still here to talk Trojan football. I'm Sam Arslanian. I run Dash Sports TV, and I'm joined again with Nathan Ackerman. Nathan, how you doing today, buddy?
The second Trojan Dash in 3 days. It's good to be giving the people what they want.
Hey, man, season's coming up. We had to make the switch. New schedule on the horizon. It's looking good. So big news today. 11 a.m. AP polls come out, and USC top 20. I know you're happy.
I'll take it, I guess. Yeah, no, I'm thrilled. I mean, I've been talking about this for several weeks. It's just like it makes no sense. You cannot tell me this team is the 20th best team in the country, right? I mean, you look at the teams ahead of them, and you see like BYU, who is 6-0, 7-0, something like that, but they have no impressive wins. The only somewhat difficult game on their schedule is like Boise State or something like that. They haven't even played them yet. Then you look at schools like Coastal Carolina. It's like, what are we doing here? I think once SC gets on the field, they win maybe, hopefully their first two or three games. Hopefully people recognize that this is like easily one of the 13 or 14 best schools in the country. 20 right now is just kind of disrespectful.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why they're doing this. It's just kind of weird to look at right now. And that's why I think this week one matchup is so huge. Because if they beat Arizona State, right, you're going to see them shoot up. They're probably going to go up top 15 at least, I'd say. I'd say closer to like just outside the top 10 if they beat Arizona State. Arizona State's a great team. They're just outside the AP top 25 themselves, right? And there's a lot of teams that really don't deserve to be there. You got BYU, Coastal Carolina, and Marshall. And, you look at Marshall's schedule, and I'm looking at it right now. Old Dominion, Florida Atlantic, Western Kentucky, Rice, Louisiana Tech, Charlotte. I'm sorry, those are the schedule from last year. My bad. But those are the same teams that are on their schedule this year. And yeah, they've won a lot of games. I don't get it. And I know they haven't played any games yet. USC hasn't played any games yet, and you're going to see them go up, and you're going to see a lot of teams shoot into the top 25. You're going to see Utah, if Utah has a couple games, a couple wins before they play USC, and hopefully USC finds a win in that game and puts them back down where they belong. But BYU at 9 is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing that kind of worried me coming into this year was that you have pretty much every conference across the country is playing a different number of games this year, right? The Big Ten is playing eight or 9 games, something like that. The SEC is playing 10 or 11. The ACC, I think, is playing all 12. The Pac-12 is playing 6 to 7, and it's like, okay, you would think that. I mean, the AP voters should be looking at pure talent rather than standings, rather than the wins and losses every single year. I mean, obviously the undefeated Clemsons are going to be like the best teams in the entire country. But you would think that this year, given that everybody's schedule is so all over the place and nobody's even playing the same number of games, they would look especially hard at how good these teams actually are, rather than how many games have they played and how many have they lost. Which it seems like at this point, given that BYU is 6-0, 7-0, something like that. I mean, you would hope that they would say, okay, they haven't played any good teams yet. They're 6-0, but they're not really that.
Well, I wouldn't say that they're not a good team. They have some very convincing wins.
Right.
They're not
but they
elite.
But they aren't. No, they aren't the 9th best team in the country.
Right.
And I was hoping that this year they would say, okay, we're going to look especially close at what is the actual talent of these teams. And for SC, you could say, okay, they haven't done anything to really prove it this year because they haven't played. But on the flip side, you could just as easily say they haven't done anything to prove anybody wrong, right? So you have to go based off of pure talent, based off of pure outlook, based off of how this team looks. And this team looks pretty good. And I bet if you asked any college coach in the country other than BYU's, which school you would, which roster, which team you would rather have right now, USC or BYU, or USC and Marshall, or USC and Coastal Carolina. I mean, they won't even think about it, right? So, hopefully that's something that works itself out, because if it comes down to the end of the year and USC's 7-0 and they're behind a mediocre team that's played an extra 2 or 3 games and has won them because they've played against basically Division II opponents, it's not going to sit well.
Well, I want to acknowledge we do have a lot of people in chat right now. We got a little chat from our boy Reagan Griffin Jr. stopped by. Imagine thinking Coastal Carolina is better than USC. Exactly. I mean, that's the thing.
Like, oh,
And remember, we're also looking at the AP poll. And in the grand scheme of things, when the season gets towards the end and the playoffs are rolling around, doesn't matter. What matters is CFP, right? Well, what matters is the CFP rankings, right? And that's all we really care about. Now, this is a good proxy to say, okay, where do analysts or whoever, whatever, think teams should be? And I think just give it some time, and USC will start climbing that ladder and getting up there. But when I think it comes down to it, these teams don't have the strength of schedule. What I will give BYU is every team they've played, aside from UTSA, which was a 7-point win, they have murdered them. 55-3 over Navy, 48-7 over Troy, 45-14 over LA Tech, 43-26 over Houston, 52-14 over Texas State, and 41-10 over Western Kentucky. Like, those are good numbers. Like, I will give them that.
Yeah, but I mean, come on.
Like, I know they're bad. I know they're bad teams. Don't get me wrong, but they 15. That's my spot. Put them at 15 right now.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we have another comment in the chat that says best Coastal Carolina team in a long time. I don't know if that was like sarcastic or
what's
anything.
That? What's the proxy for Coastal Carolina?
Yeah.
What is the best team?
I really is the bar. Yeah.
I don't think I've seen them come around in football in forever.
Yeah, it's just like it's the kind of thing that you hope doesn't screw any teams over when the season comes to a close. And I want to think the way that you think, which is that, the college football playoff committee, everybody's going to be thinking straight, and they're going to be looking at, a bigger picture view of these teams when the season comes to a close. But you would hope that they were doing that all season, and it looks like they aren't doing that so far. So maybe all they need to see is one game, and then an Arizona State win or a win over ASU in week 1 would put them somewhere in the 11 to 13, 14 range. It probably won't be that high, but I mean, if you look at pure talent, maybe it should be. I could see
it being that high. I really could. I mean, I would take a 1-0 USC team with a win over, but with a win over an Arizona State team who's just outside the top 25. If you're looking at this list, right, a win over Arizona State should shoot you above these teams. It should shoot you above Coastal Carolina. It should shoot you above Marshall. It's not going to put you above BYU. I don't know why, but it's not going to. Unless
BYU, I mean, BYU plays Boise State.
That is a big game. That's going to be a test.
They could totally get exposed.
I mean, you've seen it. I'm surprised. I thought Clemson was going to blow that game yesterday. They didn't.
Yeah. What I was thinking is that if Clemson managed to drop that game, then next week they played Notre Dame. And if they lost to Boston College without Trevor, and maybe they played Notre Dame without Trevor again, we still have to see about that. And all of a sudden they have 2 losses. I mean, even though Trevor Lawrence was injured, you can't put a 2-loss team in the college football playoff, which
you got to be able to play through those losses. That's what you're talking about. Yeah, because who's to know a team doesn't come out there and drop a player in the college football playoffs? Like, it happens, right? And that's why you want a team to be that deep. And speaking of deep, we'll get to that in a second. But I want to get a couple questions in chat. Do I think Keaton will hold up to the hype this year? Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
I know he's coming off of a bit of an injury, not a major injury, but definitely something that you would be worried about. When I went to the first practice, and frankly only practice in the spring, he just didn't look like he did a couple weeks or a couple months prior. He was a little bit shaky. But a lot of that's just shaking the rust off and getting back into things. This dude's the truth. This dude's the truth, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, and I think timing is going to be the big thing for him. I mean, we saw last year there were occasional issues with that. I mean, they weren't very common. I mean, this guy's one of the most accurate passers in college football. And this year, there's a little bit of stop and start. There's a little bit of a short. Yeah, right. There was no spring camp. I mean, there was one practice. There's a short fall camp. So I'm guessing maybe early on in weeks 1 or 2, there could be, some slight miscommunication, lack of timing issues, whatever, with the wideout group. But I mean, again, Keaton's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and the wideouts are one of the best wide receiving groups in the country. So those kinks should work themselves out pretty fast. I think the ceiling for this guy is. I mean, he could compete for a Heisman, I think. So
yeah, I mean, if he does what he did last year.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he will, but you also have a full off season of Graham Harrell, which is only going to make him that much better. So
Well, and
I think this guy's
you have a lot of things that are helping him out too. You got a way better offensive line this year. You got a defense
yeah.
that's not going to put him out there so much. That's the problem. That's what happened in that Iowa game, in that bowl game last year. Is the offense just had to keep going out there, and they just kept getting burned because they were dead tired because the defense couldn't make a stop or hold them or anything. It was tough on them. We got one more chat before I want to get to the next topic. A lot of upsets recently. And the huge thing for USC and any Pac-12 team is to find consistency. If you can, and that's kind of the beauty with the Pac-12 is you're not going to have those tough teams that you're going to have to face outside of for USC, Arizona State, and Utah, and then Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. If they get there, you just need to be consistent. You gotta find those wins. You can't take any game for granted. I know we're not playing Oregon State, but if we were playing Oregon State or Wazoo, you can't take that game for granted.
Yeah, and I almost look at it this year with the short schedule as I don't think USC could get upset by a Colorado, by a Wazoo, by an Arizona, but where they could really cost themselves, I almost look at the word upset as not just a win or a loss, but I mean if SC comes out and they play Colorado or Arizona or Wazoo, as I just said, and they win by 3 or they win by 7, I call that an upset because it obviously wouldn't give USC a loss, but it would pretty nearly ruin their college football playoff chance. I mean, we're talking about the rankings here. We're talking about making as big of an impression as you can in the short amount of time that they have to do that. And if they have one slow week, they have one week where they win a 1-possession game that they should have won by 3. I mean, it's going to be a hole that they're going to have to dig themselves out of. So I don't see SC really getting upset this year, but they're going to have to avoid those sort of take them for granted, don't come out and make as big of an impression as they would like to.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be deep and you got to be able to overcome adversity. You're going to have injuries. This is a short season. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in college. You got to get past injuries. And one thing that's getting past injuries is USC's running back core right now. Marquise Stepp is coming back. He looks great, apparently, from what we hear from practice, because we're not allowed to go. So we're taking the coaching staff's words from it and Tim Tessalone's words from it, the PR guy for USC Athletics. But I want to talk about the rushing core. We got a lot of good running backs here at USC right now. Who's going to lead them? Go.
Knee-jerk reaction, I want to say Stephen Carr. Just because I think overall he might be the most versatile of the group. He might be, I mean, I know they say that everybody's getting back to full strength. I think you don't really know that until you have them play 4 quarters against an Arizona State. You put them out on the field, they're doing lateral cuts, they're doing all those kinds of things. And, Stepp is also, he's a very physical runner, right? He's massive. It takes 10 guys to tackle him. If that's going to take a toll on him, I mean, probably not, but it's just the kind of thing where I think it's unpredictable at this point. They're obviously going to say that he looks great, and I'm sure he does. But I think it's hard to know for sure. Obviously, for us, especially not having seen any practices, not having seen them play, whether it'll hold up. And I want to say out of the gate, as they've been saying, Carr has been looking great. Like he's been one of the bright spots of this shortened fall camp. So I see that carrying over right into the early season. And again, this isn't, I don't see any running back on this team putting up a, 700-yard season and, averaging 100 yards per game. I think that they're going to go with that sort of committee kind of thing, because as I'm normally against that, I think it makes sense for this team, given the guys that they have there. So nobody's going to, run for 100, 150 more yards than any other guy, I don't think. But in the end, I would say Stephen Carr, but I could also see it being Stepp or Malapaya or even Keenan Christian too.
Well, I mean, that's the interesting thing is you have such a interesting composition. You got the speed in Keenan Christian. You got the finesse in Stephen Carr when he's out there and healthy. You got the brutality of Marquise Stepp where it takes 18 guys to bring him down. And then you got Vi, who's just going to smash it through on 3rd and 1, which, it's perfect. And they're absolutely going to run that dichotomy of backs, right? And they should do that. But the guy that stands out to me the most is Marquise Stepp. You look at what he was able to do last year. That guy was an animal out there. In the few games he played, I think he played 6 games. I think he had just over 300 yards rushing. Dude, this guy's awesome, man. This guy is going to tear it up out there. And this isn't an air raid offense, too. Granted, it's not air raid, right? Where it's like a Mike Leach air raid. It's definitely more of a hybrid, and it's a situational air raid. Whatever that means, Graham Harrell keeps saying it. But I like it. It's working. The offense is working. But I think Marquise Stepp is going to get out there and be that consistent guy where they can put him out there every play if they need to. They're not going to. But if there's a play, he can get that extra yard. He can break off that big run. Whereas Stephen Carr is, I like him. I love what I see from him, but I just need a little bit more consistency from him. And that's great, and I want to see that. And a lot of it's due to injury, and that's fine. Like, injuries hurt, but I need some more consistency. Vi, I love his role as that short gain guy, and I think it works. I'd love to see that. Keenan Christian, he's just so one-dimensional right now, and we didn't see a lot of him.
Strong.
He's strong. I'm not saying he's not, but right now, from what we've seen, he's one-dimensional. Right, his speed is his big thing. I'm not saying he doesn't have other assets. He doesn't have strength or he doesn't have elusiveness or whatever. But his elusiveness and his strength right now is speed, and I want to see a little bit else from him. Right, and granted, he was young last year. Right, he was a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. Right, yeah. So I need a little bit more than just speed, but I like the guy. Don't get me wrong. He came in and he ran with it, literally. No pun there, but what do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the thing that I always keep on coming back to, and I might be kind of beating a dead horse here, is that the wide receivers in the passing game, and Keaton Slovis also, just opens up so much more for this ground attack to do its thing, right? Because what you do is, you put Amon-Ra out there, you put Vaughns out there, you put London out there. All of a sudden, like, the entire defense has to think about the fact that one of those guys could burn him for like 45 yards, right? And all of a sudden you get defenses so spread out that, you pound Stepp right up the middle. It takes, like we said, 10 guys to bring him down. Well, there's only 2 or 3 guys there. So he's either, running for 15 untouched, or he's dragging guys for like 20 more yards. And I think that'll work for, the physical guys like Stepp, and it'll work for the fast guys like Keenan too, because, he bursts up the middle also. There's a giant hole there, and he's gone for 25 before anybody has even touched it. Maybe I'm exaggerating that, but I just think that that's going to open up so much more space and so much more room for these guys to do their thing. And we're gonna, when this season's over, we're not gonna look back on this group and say this is why USC is where it is, wherever that might be, right? Whether it's college football playoff, Rose Bowl, Pac-12 championship, but it's going to be an important aspect of this team, more so than I think Graham Harrell is willing to let on.
Well, I mean, I know you're a year younger than I am, academically. But what I will say is I was around for the 2017 season, right? That was the last season with Sam Darnold here. Now, this is absolutely true for you, and I'm going to say it's true for me too, but this is the best USC offense we've had since we've been here. Absolutely for you, maybe for me. But you look at this, I don't see a weak spot on this offense right now, dude. The line is the only thing that concerns me, just because it hasn't been good, but it's good this year. From what we know and just the people that we know are on the line, I'm excited for that. And that's going to help those running backs. That's going to help Keaton. You saw Keaton's biggest strength, and this is why Keaton worked over JT Daniels when he wasn't working. And granted, the line did get better from 2018 to 2019. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm not blaming JT for that. But when the times that the line broke down, you look at that Oregon game. Yeah, it was horrible. USC got absolutely mauled by their defense. But Keaton was able to buy time in the pocket. He was able to elude, defenders coming in on him. He didn't take sacks as much as JT did. He didn't make egregious interceptions. He had interceptions, but the only egregious ones I can really remember from last year were BYU. And BYU is a separate story, right? This first road game, a lot of other factors that went into it, and I can excuse that. But we don't see those garbage interceptions from him. And if you can combine that with a run game, more time in the pocket, and the ability to get out of the pocket if you need it and complete a pass, dude, this offense is wild.
Yeah. I think the O-line's going to be good. Losing Austin Jackson was tough.
Yeah, but you fill him right in with AVT, And thank God AVT is not going. When I saw he opted out, I'm like, if there's a season, we are dead. And then he opted back in. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
God, that was.
And I mean, that
huge.
just. Yeah, that just goes to show. Like, I think the players believe in this team as well. And I'm not saying AVT wouldn't have come back if this was like, some middle bottom of the Pac-12 South kind of team that didn't really have any real aspirations this year. But when he came back, he was like, I wanted to come back and compete with my teammates and like compete for a Pac-12 championship. And I think the team really believes that this year. I think there's a sort of energy around this team that. I mean, I think the team has always believed in itself in years past, but I don't know. It seems like there's that little bit of extra juice this year that I think could go a long way.
Yeah, it reminds me of. Did you go to the Arizona State game last year?
That was the one game I missed.
One game you didn't go to? God, I can't remember who it was, but there was a press conference after, and that was right when they got their 6th win on an interception by, who was it? Christian Rector, yep. And we're sitting in the press room waiting for Helton and friends to come through for the interviews. And someone, I want to say it was Hunter Eccles, but I don't think it was.
I think it
was it Hunter Eccles?
Yeah, maybe not.
I don't know. One of them.
I don't know.
Burst into the room, just tackle the door over. I don't know if they thought it was a locker room or what, and just go, "We're going bowling. We're going bowling." I'm like, dude, that should not be the standard for this team.
Yeah.
6 wins? Are you kidding me? That's the standard? That's a Tony the Tiger Bowl. That's not the standard here. Absolutely not. But now you look at it, that Pac-12 championship, if they don't at least make it there, disappointment.
Yeah.
They gotta win all these games. That's what I'm saying. They gotta win all these games. 6 in a row. They have to do it. No excuses. But that brings us to our last topic. There were a lot of things that went wrong last year. There were a lot of things that went wrong in 2018. What is the signal that everything has clicked, that this is the USC that we've been waiting for? Everyone in the media has been talking 2020 is the year. Since 2018, 2020, 2020. That's the year that they're going to do it. What's the signs for you?
For me, it's discipline number 1 and then consistency number 2. And these were 2 things that we did not see a lot of last year, right? Every week, it sort of came back to me last year that the theme of this team was that there is no theme. The theme is that we have no idea what to expect. I mean, they go out, they beat number 10 Utah by 7 points, something like that, in a pretty convincing, without Keaton Slovis, right? Matt Fink played that game, and then they come back. I think it was the week later, and I might actually have the weeks flipped.
Washington.
I think they were back-to-back weeks where they go out to BYU. And that was just a stinker, right? Keaton Slovis threw 3 picks. I mean, some of those were like really weird, like deflected, shouldn't have happened at all, just like freak picks. But either way, that wasn't, number 9 in the country BYU at that point. That was a team that SC should have destroyed. And then they come out with the Washington game, and that game was not great. But then they go out to South Bend, right, against the Fighting Irish, and they didn't win that game, but they outplayed them in 3 quarters, and they lost by 3 on the road to, at that point, was like number 8 in the country. So that was an impressive game right there. And then they come out with the Oregon game. They get, their doors blown open. It's just I didn't know what to expect. And I think if that same thing happened this year, I don't see how this team can recover from that. And I think one of the teams that brought them down a lot last year, too, was discipline, was stupid penalties on defense, whatever, late hits, stupid roughing them. I mean, just things like that. That's just unnecessary roughnesses, like unsportsmanlike conduct, just things that should not have happened and things that set them back a lot and not only killed, field position or killed that kind of thing, but killed morale too. And then they just go out and lose that game. So that's something that I think is going to turn around this year with Todd Orlando, Dante Williams coming in. But we're just going to have to see, because when push comes to shove, the players are the ones that are going to be making the difference. And if they can turn that around and they can become more consistent this year, I think that's when we know that the individual pieces, which we've seen for the last couple of years, that they'll all be together. And this team, when you add those pieces together, the product is going to be special.
I'm less worried about discipline than I am a lot of other things. Like, discipline's huge, right? I mean, we know that penalties hurt this team, but penalties don't hurt good teams. If you can consistently win and consistently put up points, it's fine to have penalties there. If you're up 21 points, it doesn't matter at that point, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. You see a lot of these good teams. Ohio State was one of the most penalized teams last year, if I'm remembering correctly. And they were, Ohio State, right? So I'm less worried about that. What I'm worried about is consistency in the defense, right? And I'm gonna branch that out to special teams too, because you look at, and I'm gonna plug this myself again one more time, because I called it right 2 years in a row. Thank you. After that Holiday Bowl, okay, it was clear that things were not working. But where were the things not working? Defense and special teams. The offense was fine. It was fine. Plus, halfway through, you lost your starting quarterback again. We had to bring in Matt Fink. Matt Fink's not supposed to be the guy running this offense. Okay, straight, plain and simple. So I'm like, you know what? Helton's staying again. They need to fire Clancy. They need to fire Pendergast, and we will figure this out. And they did just that. So 2 years running, Clay Helton not getting fired, and the right position coach getting fired. So what I'm looking for is consistency. I want special teams to be consistent. There are so many errors last year. I mean, what was it? They put 2 number 7s out on the field to start the season.
The first play of
the game. You have like 6 months to prepare for that. 6 months, what we're going to do, who's going to be out there, what jersey they're going to be wearing. First of all, USC, I've seen this happen multiple times. They've been penalized multiple times for this. Wear a different jersey. Oh my God, the number's not that important. Look, I played sports. I know what a number is. But if it's going to cost you 15 or whatever, 10 yards or whatever it is, get a different number, man. Come on. It's ridiculous at this point. But that defense needs to bear down. They need to be able to make the stops. They need to not just be helpless. And the other thing, I'm gonna take off consistency from you too. They were not consistent game to game, but they weren't consistent quarter to quarter. I know you said play a whole game.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was, but halftime was just flip it. There were so many times I wrote a story last year where it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, here the story's done. It's going to be done at halftime, yada, yada, yada. And then completely different game in the second half, and it's just control A, delete all, and call it a day.
Yeah. And that comes back to special teams too. I think it was the Oregon game last year, right, where USC toward the end of the first half, they were down like 7 points, 4 or 7 points, something like that. Like it was a winnable game, and I don't think Justin Herbert was playing particularly well in the first half either. And SC had like just scored. There was like 30 seconds before the half. All the momentum was on their side. I think they were getting the ball at halftime too. All of a sudden, Oregon like returns a 108-yard kickoff for a touchdown. Boom! Now it's like a 10, 11-point game, and it just snowballed from there. So those are the kinds of things that I think aren't going to be as big of a problem this year. I think they allowed 2 kickoff return for touchdowns last year, which was like most in the Pac-12, and that should be 0. That shouldn't happen all season. So hopefully that gets fixed this year. But it's those kinds of plays aren't just about the points, although the points will certainly kill you. It's all about the momentum. And that was what lost them the Oregon game. I mean, many things lost them that game, but that one certainly didn't help. And that's just the kind of thing, like I said, where it's all about the momentum. It's all about being disciplined enough to not let that sort of thing happen and then let it spiral out of control from there. And I think that if they can figure that out, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, like we've said the entire show, I'm not worried about the offense in any realm. Like, no. I don't even need to watch the offense. I can tell who's going to win this game based on the defense for USC. Say defense wins championships. I don't think that's true, but I think this defense needs to, hold its line so the USC offense can actually do something.
I would like to say I really hope Keaton Slovis does not get hurt, because quarterback room.
Let me tell you, having AVT back definitely helps. I was worried. I was worried. I'm like, this dude's gonna. Like, I wasn't like, he was gonna get sacked a lot if AVT wasn't there. A lot more. I'm sorry, not a lot, but a lot more than he would have if he is there. But I was worried about injury, man. Like, the sacks are one thing, but you knock him out for an entire game, 2 games, 3 games, whatever the concussion protocol is.
That's it. In a 7-game season, that's it. Unless they can somehow find a way. I mean, you saw against Utah last year, the game plan was throw it up and hope that a receiver comes down with it, and it worked because the receivers are crazy. But I don't know.
And we got crazy receivers this year. But that's all the time we have for this episode of Trojan Dash. Thank you guys for tuning in, being active in the comments. We'd love to see that. Nathan, thank you for taking the time to be here with me.
Of course.
As always, you can find us on the web at dashsports.tv, on socials, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at dashsportstv. We're starting podcasts now, so this episode will be available on Spotify along with all of our other Dash shows, and we do columns exclusively with sportspac12.com through our new partnership. Nathan writes there every week, so make sure you go check that out, and we will see you next week.